But before we dive into the disturbing tales of the night, let me ask you, do you have the courage to stay until the end? Most viewers don't subscribe to the channel, perhaps out of oversight, or perhaps because after hearing these stories, they never slept the same way again. If you think you can handle it, click subscribe now. The Sunset Inn has seen better days. Located on the outskirts of Chicago, its golden shine from the past faded decades ago. Now, it's just a stopover for addicts, drifters, and criminals who prefer a cheap roof to sleeping on the sidewalk. Mateo has worked there for 6 months. It's a dangerous job, but it pays enough for him to remain invisible to the authorities. That night, a different guest arrives. A tall man with disheveled hair and dark sunglasses who asks for the highest and most isolated room. He speaks little and pays up front for 2 weeks. He has no luggage, just an old leather backpack. Mateo feels a chill when he sees the guy. Something about him just doesn't seem right. In the following days, Mateo hears reports from his colleague Jared, who works the night shift. He says that the man goes in and out of the hotel every early morning, always carrying a heavy backpack. Jared tries to joke about it. Maybe he's a murderer carrying body parts. Mateo laughs, but deep down he feels that the joke might not be so absurd after all. That same night, Jared sees the man dragging something down the hallway, but when he tries to get closer, he disappears into room 1413 and locks the door. On the third night at 3 a.m., Mateo is on the ground floor when he hears a desperate scream echoing through the hotel. It's coming from above, from the 14th floor. The corridors of the Sunset Inn are a dirty and moldy labyrinth with flickering lights on the ceiling. Mateo goes up slowly with the flashlight shaking in his hand. In the hallway, the absolute silence is worse than any noise. He approaches room 1413 and hears whispers, the muffled voice of a girl, a sob, then a scratching sound on the door. He freezes. He's about to knock when the doorknob slowly turns from the inside. Mateo steps back, holding his breath. The door opens just a crack, revealing total darkness inside. Then the guest emerges. He smiles. "Are you lost?" His voice is slurred, loaded with something that doesn't seem human. Mateo swallows hard. The smell coming from the room is strong, metallic. "The power went out, I came to check." He improvises. The man stares at Mateo for a few seconds that seem like an eternity. Then he shakes his head and replies, "No need to worry. I've already taken care of everything." He pushes the door slowly and closes it. Mateo feels his heart almost jump out of his mouth. He heard someone in there, but now the only sound coming from the room is a radio playing old jazz. Mateo runs back to the reception and tells everything to the manager, Doug, who just shrugs. "If he paid up front, it's not our problem." But something is very wrong. The next night, Mateo waits in the parking lot. When the man leaves the hotel carrying his backpack, he decides to follow him from a distance. The guy walks for 3 blocks to a dark alley. He crouches down, opens the backpack, and pulls out a long piece of black plastic. Mateo can't see what's inside, but it seems to be moving. The man looks around, making sure no one is watching. Then he drops the backpack on the ground and simply walks away. Mateo waits for the man to disappear around the corner and runs to the backpack. His hands are shaking as he opens the zipper. Inside, there's a face, a girl. She's tied up, eyes wide, tape on her mouth, and she's still alive. Mateo pulls the girl out, trying to untie her, when he hears a footstep behind him. You shouldn't have gotten involved. He feels a cold hand touching his shoulder and spins around, only to see the man with sunglasses smiling in the darkness. Mateo barely has time to react before feeling a blow to the head. Mateo wakes up, tied to a chair. He is in a dark room, illuminated only by a red camera flashing. The man is standing in front of him, holding a surgical knife. "Do you want to know why I chose this hotel?" he asks, adjusting his glasses. Because no one misses the people who disappear here. Matteo fights against the bonds, but they are too tight. The man approaches, holding the knife against his face. But you gave me trouble, so it's going to be special. We're going to make a really fun movie. He turns on the camera. The last thing Matteo hears before the door explodes with a kick is the police storming in. The shots echo. The man tries to run, but is hit head-on. The room is taken over by the police, and Matteo faints. When he wakes up, he's in the hospital. The police say that the man was a serial killer, responsible for dozens of disappearances. He filmed his victims in snuff films, sold on the deep web. The recordings found in room 1413 were disturbing. The man had no known identity. There were no records of him. It was as if he had never existed. And the worst part, he always wore sunglasses. In the last images before being apprehended, he looks directly at the camera and smiles. Emily and Michael had always wanted to visit New Orleans. The historic architecture, the jazz bars, and the vibrant energy of the city were perfect for their honeymoon. They chose a charming, elegant, and highly rated hotel, the Saint Laurent Hotel, located in the French Quarter. The lobby was luxurious, decorated with antique furniture and crystal chandeliers. The receptionist smiled as she handed them the key to room 708. This is one of our most historic rooms. I hope you enjoy your stay. Emily felt a chill upon hearing that. Room 708 was spacious, with a huge bed and a balcony overlooking the bustling streets of the city. But something bothered Emily. The paintings. There were 4 old paintings scattered around the walls. They depicted figures dressed in black with pale faces and eyes sunken into darkness. None of them had mouths. "This is kind of creepy, isn't it?" Emily commented. Michael laughed. "They're just old paintings. Relax." But she felt like the eyes of the figures were following her as she walked around the room. After a long day exploring the city, the couple returned to the hotel exhausted. Emily fell asleep quickly, but woke up suddenly at 2 a.m. She heard murmurs. It was as if someone was whispering in the room, talking in a strange language. Looking to the side, she saw that Michael was also awake. "Are you hearing this?" he muttered. The sound seemed to come from inside the walls. Then something made Emily's heart freeze. The paintings were different. The figures now had mouths, and they were smiling. Michael jumped out of bed and turned on the light. The sound stopped instantly. Emily looked at the paintings. They seemed normal again, without mouths. "I saw it. They were different," she whimpered. Michael held her hands. "You must have been dreaming." He tried to calm her down, and they both went back to bed. But before falling asleep, Emily looked at the room's mirror, and she saw a figure standing behind them, dressed in black, with an impossible smile. She couldn't scream. The next morning, Emily and Michael went straight to the front desk. "We want another room. Now!" Michael demanded. The receptionist didn't seem surprised. "Room 708 has had many complaints." She switched their room immediately. The rest of their stay was uneventful, but Emily couldn't forget that night. When they returned home, she decided to research the hotel, and what she found made her blood run cold. The Saint Laurent Hotel once belonged to an eccentric painter named Thomas Avery. He was obsessed with the occult and claimed that his paintings were portals to another dimension. At the end of his life, he locked himself in room 708 and killed himself in front of his works. Since then, guests have reported strange phenomena. Some have heard whispers in the early morning. Others have seen the paintings changing position, and 3 people have disappeared in that room without a trace. The hotel sealed off room 708. But they say that if you walk down the hallway late at night, you can hear muffled laughter. And if you look through the cracks in the door, you can see the paintings, and they'll be smiling at you. The Riverside Hotel was a modest hotel with discreet guests, mostly business people and solitary tourists. Laura had worked there for 4 months and was already used to the routine. But that morning, something was different. "Did you see that new guy?" asked Cindy, another chambermaid. Laura shook her head. "He's in room 911, Cindy whispered. "The manager said he booked for a whole month. Who stays that long in a hotel like this?" At lunchtime, Laura saw him. A tall, pale man in a dark suit and unkempt beard. His eyes were deep, tired, as if he hadn't slept for days. He passed through the hallway, but didn't seem to step on the ground. Laura shuddered, but she continued her work. That night, around 9 p.m., Laura was finishing cleaning the last room in the hallway when she heard muffled crying. It was coming from room 911. It was a low, anguished lament, as if someone was suffering. She froze. Was the guest crying? The next morning, Laura commented to Frank, the receptionist, "That guy in 911, is he okay? He was crying yesterday." Frank raised his eyebrows. "What?" "The guest in 911, you know, the guy who booked for a month?" Frank turned pale. "Laura, room 911 is empty." She laughed nervously. "No, I saw him yesterday." Frank pulled up the guest registry and turned it towards her. Room 911 had no one registered. Laura felt her blood run cold. But she had seen that man. He was there. The reception decided to check the recordings. Laura, Cindy, and Frank huddled in front of the monitor while the security guard rewound the tape from the previous night. The video showed Laura passing through the hallway. The audio captured the crying from room 911, but no one came out of the room. No one entered. And then, the instant Laura passed the door, the camera flickered. For half a second, a dark shadow appeared, standing behind her, watching her. Laura screamed and backed away from the monitor. "What the hell is that?" Frank turned off the screen immediately. I don't think you should go up to that floor anymore." But it was too late. That night, Laura dreamed about room 911. In the dream, she was standing in front of the door, holding a set of keys. Something on the other side was whispering her name. She wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. Then the door opened on its own, and he was there, the man in the dark suit. His face was pale and lifeless. His eyes were empty, sunken into his skull, and he smiled at her. Laura woke up screaming. In the following days, Laura refused to go up to the 9th floor, but the story of room 911 wouldn't leave her head. She went to Eleanor, an older chambermaid who had worked at the hotel for 20 years. Eleanor looked at her seriously when Laura asked, "Do you really want to know?" Eleanor took a deep breath and told her. Years ago, a businessman named Richard Wells stayed in room 911. He was bankrupt, lost in debt, and about to lose everything. One night, the guests on the floor heard crying and banging on the walls. The next morning, an employee found Richard's body in the room. He had hanged himself in the bathroom. Since then, all the employees knew that room 911 was cursed. Guests reported hearing crying at night. Chambermaids said that the bed would unmake itself, and some saw a man in a dark suit standing in the hallway. But he never appeared on the cameras. The following week, Laura quit. She couldn't work there anymore. Soon after, the hotel closed room 911 forever. But if you visit the Riverside on a quiet night and walk on the 9th floor, maybe you'll hear muffled crying coming from the end of the hallway. And if you look to the side, maybe you'll see a man in a dark suit standing there. He might smile at you, or maybe he's still waiting for someone to open the door. I've worked at the front desk of the Bayou Grand Hotel for 2 years. It's a historic place, built in the 19th century, and it hosts many tourists who want to explore the darker side of New Orleans. Since I started here, I've always heard rumors about a non-existent floor. Some older employees say that from time to time, the elevator takes guests to floor 14, but the hotel only has 13 floors. Everyone thinks it's nonsense. Until one night, a woman disappeared, and I was the last person to see her. It was a quiet Tuesday, almost midnight. A woman named Rachel Collins came to the front desk. She was nervous, said she had heard whispers in the hallway and wanted to change rooms. I tried to calm her down and gave her the key to a room on the 6th floor. She took the key and went to the elevator. I swear I saw her press the button for the 6th floor. But when the door closed, the digital panel flashed 14. I stopped everything I was doing. The hotel doesn't have a 14th floor. I jumped over the counter and ran to the next elevator to go up after her. But when I got to the 6th floor, there was no one there. The hallway was empty. The elevator was still stopped on 14. But that floor doesn't exist. The next morning, I went to review the security cameras with the security guard. I knew I had seen the elevator go to 14. The video showed Rachel entering the elevator. The door closed, and suddenly the light flickered. The elevator didn't stop on the 6th floor. Instead, the screen on the digital panel started spinning, showing strange symbols like ancient runes. The camera inside the elevator failed for 3 seconds, and when it came back on, Rachel was no longer there. The elevator was empty. She disappeared in the middle of the ride. After that, I found out that Rachel wasn't the first. Other guests have also disappeared in the elevator in recent years. People who never checked out. People who were never found. The older employees said that the Bayou Grand Hotel once had a 14th floor, but it was sealed off in the 1920s because something bizarre happened there. Old records talk about a secret ritual performed by a mysterious guest. They say he opened a portal to another place and disappeared along with 6 people. The hotel erased the existence of that floor, but sometimes it comes back. After Rachel's disappearance, the manager forbade employees from talking about it, but I know the truth. Sometimes when I'm working the night shift, I see the elevators moving on their own. They always stop on floor 14. When that happens, the light flickers. I hear a low whisper coming from the front desk radio, and I swear that on some nights I hear someone calling from the back of the empty elevator. It's a woman's voice, Rachel's voice, but I never answer, because I know that if I get on that elevator, I'll never come back.